Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another gunpla review, and today I'm taking a look at yet another P-Bandai kit. This right here is the RX-124 Gundam TR-6 Hazel II. First off, I'll mention this video right here would not be possible without those awesome people at Bai. So if you're having trouble finding some P-Bandai kits, rare kits, anything like that, then check out that link down there in the description, because that's where I got this. However, before we actually get into this, if you're anything like me, you might be like, well, what the hell is that thing? So personally, I never knew a whole lot about Advance of Zeta. The reason for that is it is not an anime and it's not even a manga. It's more of a photo novel and mechanical designs that were in the Japanese magazine Dengeki Hobby. So essentially that means it was just a series of photos, a bit of a novel written there as well, and then a bunch of pictures of some absolutely awesome looking mobile suits, but that's it. So that does mean for the most part with a lot of Western fans and probably a lot of Japanese Gundam fans as well, is that they wouldn't have even known what it was. And to make matters worse, this kit right here, as well as the Wound Wart which it is based on, are P-Bandai only kits. Some of the other Advance of Zeta kits came out as normal kits, including the high-grade Hazel, but then again the Master Grade variant, that is P-Bandai only. So not only is it a lot of random stuff in Japanese magazines, it's also kits that aren't necessarily widely available. So if you are, like me, a bit confused about these releases, let's delve a little bit deeper. Because so far these designs, the Hazel, the Wound Wart, the Hazel II right here, and if you're confused about that naming system, I'll get to that too, but all of these kits look absolutely phenomenal, so they're definitely worth knowing about. Okay, so this basically breaks it down. We're going to understand these things in 30 seconds. That's what we're going to do, understand these mobile suits. So, straight up in the top left here, we've got the three major suits from Advance of Zeta. That is the Wound Wart right here, which is essentially what we're looking at today. This here called the Furairu, and then we've got the Hazel right here. The Hazel I've done a review of, well the Master Grade, this is the Advanced Hazel right here I think, but either way, let's speed this up. We're going to zoom out, this is all color coded. Green are all based on the Wound Wart, red all based on the Furairu, and blue is all based on the Hazel. So essentially the best way to put that is, these are combination of these kits with different backpacks, so on and so forth. For most parts, with mobile suits like the Hazel, they're all different backpacks like the Furudodo. So essentially in a way you can kind of consider it like the way the striker packs work in Mobile Suit Gundam Seed. It's kind of the same thing, and the most variable mobile suit from them all is the Wound Wart. So the Wound Wart is this tiny little guy, looks like a bug, super cute, but it can combine with so many different things, making it fit a lot of different scenarios. So what we have right here is all the different variants of it in green. So I'm going to zoom right in down here to the Hazel II. So the reason it's called Hazel II, and the reason any of these are called an anything 2, is because they are emulating the best aspects of that particular mobile suit. So the Wound Wart here is emulating the best aspects of the Hazel. So that is the point. So what it's made from, and it's all color coded here, is a green shield and a yellow butt flap, as well as those two composite shields. So we'll zoom out, zoom back in, and there are the yellow parts. So the yellow backpack comes from the parts that mix with the Wound Wart, making it the Hazen 2. And down here as well, we've got the Hazen Slay. So that's essentially what the parts are. These are them attaching to the Hazel, and this is them attaching to the Wound Wart. Again, the shield there, color-coded in green. We zoom out, zoom back in again, and the green segments here are from the Ki Haru. So it's just the shield this time around, but if it took all those parts, it would look like this absolute beast right here. So basically, that is everything. So a lot of these mobile suits, when made into kits, will more than likely be P-Bandai. We've already seen this one announced at the Shizuoka Hobby Show. That is the Advanced Wound Wart, which is made up out of the Hazen Slay. I'm pretty sure soon you'll be able to make this Geplant 2 out of parts that are going to be released from the P-Bandai shop. And all I can say is, look at this beast right here. This is basically the Wound Wart Gigantic, which is basically like Wound Wart Gigantic, and that has parts from the Psycho Gundam. Pretty awesome. So now that you know everything about the TR line of mobile suits, there is pretty much everything that comes in this particular box. So that is the TR-6 Hazel II itself, aka literally the Wound Wart. We've got a lot of color correcting stickers, as well as some sticker style decals, rifle and shield, and then the rest of the parts there are essentially just for the parts formation into the mobile armor mode, as well as the transformation of the composite shields, but we'll get to those later on. So that right there is what the Hazel II looks like out of the box and snapped together, and this is one insanely nice looking kit. I will mention right off the bat that I'm not the hugest fan of the Titan's color scheme, and that is mainly one of the only differences that makes this different to the other kit. For the most part, it is very, very similar, but as for the reasons I'm not such a big fan of the color scheme is, On paper and in the anime, the Titan's color scheme looks great, but once it gets on a model kit like this, so much of the detail is absolutely lost. And on top of that, Bandai's plastic, when it comes to this kind of navy blue color, tends to mark quite a bit. But still, with those two small grievances out of the way, this thing looks insane, especially those two big composite shields around on the booster pod. So as for now, I'm actually just gonna pop off the composite shields back here. This one and this one. They kind of make it hard to fit into frame, and we'll talk about those in the accessories later, but for now we're gonna see what makes this different from this. So just like the high-grade wound ward kit from last year that this kit is based on, this is one of the oddest mobile suits to have the moniker Gundam. In a way, it doesn't look like a Gundam at all. The only real Gundam-y aspects to it is that typical Gundam mouthpiece, as well as that kind of V-fin up on the head. Besides that, this looks like something else entirely, and something awesome at that. It really has a kind of cute bug-like aesthetic. The reason it's got big thighs and that big butt flap is because apparently its generators are in its leg and booster pod. All in all, this is an extremely unique design and an extremely unique build, and I have to say, this, or at least the kit it was based on, was designed from the ground up. For it to be P-Bandai is absolutely and utterly ridiculous because, honestly, I ignored it because of that fact, and I would have missed out on something awesome if I completely and utterly passed on it altogether. It's got an extremely unique silhouette, some awesome proportions, and all in all, it's just pretty damn cool. So at this point you might be wondering, is this just the wound wart in those Titans colors? And the answer is essentially kind of. So in this box, and I actually wrote it on the back of these so I wouldn't forget, we've got 9 runners from the wound wart and 5 which are unique to the Hazel II right here. That is 5 for 2019 and 9 from last year. So essentially, it's 9 parts wound wart, 5 parts new. So as for the leftover parts in here, there isn't a whole lot. This right here is all that's in there. So as you can see, it's just really changed around the butt flap and the drum section from its inner waist. So if you flip this guy around here, you can see that the back, oh no, stand up. The back part is what's different. So the wound wart had this more rounded butt flap, whereas this one has a more, well, I guess Hazel style one. Just more elongated. It also has this little moving section here. But all in all, this is just to facilitate the 2 composite shields. Besides that though, the biggest difference is the color, and whoa man, this thing comes with a lot of leftover stickers, a lot. The main ones there are for on the long railgun sections of the composite shields. But besides that, we've got some black ones which were meant to go up on the tips of these sections. A lot of parts for lenses. These sections were for these little parts right here. Personally, I think they look better not colored than with those big old stickers on them. And this one right here, of course, would have been for color correcting that little V there down on the waist unit. All in all though, that is a pretty hefty sheet of foils right there. In here we also get this small sheet of sticker style decals. That is them right there. They might be a little bit hard to see. They're kind of hard to show in this kind of lighting because they are white on light blue. But in here we get 2 different style of decals. So now moving on to the accessories, and as well as those composite shields we can see up there on the shoulders, there is quite a lot of things in here, mainly for parts formations of some of this. But first up, let's take a look at the hands. So as for the hands in here, we've got your standard pair of big square hole holding hands, as well as that then, and these are some nice hands I might add. These don't actually attach with a ball joint like we usually see. These attach with a standard peg, and that does have a hinge which allows them to bend like so. Pretty cool. As well as that, then we do have a pair of dynamic hands. That is them right there. Those are pretty cool. Like I mentioned, that is a pair, so we do have a left and a right. In the box, we also have one of these runnerless stands. By runnerless, I mean that this doesn't have anything left over when you snap it apart and stick it together. In here, we also have a base adapter, so this particular kit does not have a hole in its crotch, or should I say butt. And then this just slots down into that cradle, just like so. And this is one hell of an attachment. You actually have to bend it forward for it to snap out of that to get it out, because if you try and just pull it out directly, that's not going to happen. So as for this guy's standard armaments, first up in here we have this very nice little shield here. This is color separated into that dark Titans navy blue, the white on top. Around on the underside, this is in a slightly different shade of purple, almost a matte color, and there is the attachment point that attaches onto the wrist. As simple as that. This is secure and perfect, and then you just pop in whatever hand that you want back into the wrist. Honestly, this is a really nice shield design. Loving this. The beam rifle, on the other hand, I absolutely and utterly despise. It's exactly the same color as the model kit itself, as the mobile suit. That just looks real lame. I know it's still meant to be a navy blue color, but if you look at the original art right here, you can see that it's a slightly different color. On top of that, the pipe down there isn't colored, and it's all just one big wedge of the one color. This is just made of two separate sections sandwiched together, and not cool. At the absolute very least, this should have been cast in the same plastic as this darker section up here, but all in all, this big plank of navy blue, not awesome. And matters kind of go from bad to worse when you realize this doesn't fit. Look at the angle of the wrist, which cannot move from that angle compared to the gun. You can already tell that this is going to be a nightmare. Look at that. That is not going to fit. This is really going to have to be held at some kind of wonky angle. So there is a quick look at the box of how it's being held. It's being tucked in underneath the arm in that particular pose, and it seems to be just barely in the hand right there, and kind of just, I don't know, clunking against the shoulder there. Let's try it out. So there it is in the hand the way it shows on the box, and I've noticed this before with some badly designed hands and gun combinations, is it's at an angle in the hand there. It cannot really be held straight. That is because the arm, even though it has a hinge, or I should say the hand, even though it has a hinge, can tilt inwards, it cannot tilt outwards. So what we've got is this incredibly awkward holding angle. So that right there is the only other way I can get it into the hand, and once again, it cannot line up with the arm per se. As you can see, it always has to be at an angle that crosses in behind the arm because of the angle the handle is and the angle the hand holds it at. So all in all, this beam rifle here is an absolute flop. Anyway, moving on to what is next, and of course that is the composite shields. These, compared to that beam rifle, look absolutely and utterly phenomenal. The only moving section is this part down here, which moves side to side like so. But combined with the polycap that is in the booster pod on the back, this gets quite a bit of movement. So in with the Hazel II, there is shield number 1, flip it all the way around. Right there is shield the second, and these things I have to say are absolutely awesome. You can do a whole lot with these. The booster pod on the back can move up and down. It can change its angle at the little drum section in here ever so slightly, so you can bring that up as well. These have that pivot I showed you before, and on top of that, they can rotate in that polycap. So essentially you can have these pointing right up in the air like you can see there. They can pivot separately to the booster pod like so you can bring them forward like that. Or you can bring the whole booster pod up and almost to its back, then bring them in over the shoulders. So these are absolutely awesome looking weapons, and with their articulation, they're even better. So that is essentially it for the weapons that we get in this box. The rest of the stuff here is for parts formation, and before I actually get into its change to mobile armor mode, as well as the transformation of the weapons, I'm going to take a look at this thing's articulation. So this thing right here has one of the most unique builds I have ever seen, so the articulation on this is extremely unique. It is worth noting here that the neck is not your standard polycap that you usually get on a high grade. This is actually a proper plastic neck. This does have a solid giggity. There's the head all the way down, all the way up, side to side pivot, and of course that can rotate all the way around. We've got this nice little pivoting joint at the shoulder, which allows it to move forward and back like that. Also moving this flap. That particular joint does allow the arm to rotate all the way around, lets this little segment pivot. There is the arm raised all the way up, so about perpendicular to the ground. Full upper arm rotation right here. This is probably the most bizarrely designed Gundam arm I have ever seen. Look at that. We've got this little section here that moves in and out like that. We've got this, what I assume is meant to be the elbow right here. Of course, this is part of it all folding away into a mobile armor mode. And just like we saw at the wrist before, that is just a pivot here. And just like we saw with the wrist before, this is a rotation here, as well as that hinge inwards, not outwards. Wait, this one can move outwards. So the widespread open hand can move outwards, but the fist cannot. So I'm gonna pop off the torso for a second because there's a lot going on in here. This little flap can pull out and move up like so. This section in the waist can move in and out like that. The wound warts design does revolve around this little drum section in the center, so that just pops in there like so, but you don't really get anything out of it when it's there besides a tiny little ab crunch, not really anything, as well as a bit of side to side rotation. Again, not a whole lot. Around in the back, that booster pod can move slightly up and down on that drum section. We have a joint in there which allows it to move up and down like so, as well as rotate on that point. This little segment here that can open up. The big crotch unit here that can move down and up like so. Maybe we can get more out of the waist when that's down. Nope, not at all. So that can move up and down. This whole segment underneath does pull out just like so. So we do have a sub arm in there. A handy dandy sub arm for those times it's got an itchy taint. At the waist then, it can kick its leg all the way up to the front, pretty much all the way around. I'd say if the arm wasn't there, these could fully rotate. As for the splits, it has no problem whatsoever. And this does have an extra joint in here you don't normally see that it can bend out like that. I assume once again this is part of the transformation, but that is pretty cool. A lot of what is going on down here is part of the transformation. These little sections here, they fold in and out so it can stand up, or this is an aerial mode. And as for the knee bend, it's more of a full fold up and in for that transformation. And speaking of which, let's move on to that. However, I will mention that the articulation on this kit is literally mind-blowing. Pretty damn awesome. So moving on to the transformation, and this is 100% a parts formation right here. So basically you strip this thing down entirely off with the arms, torso, waist unit, legs, and if you have those composite shields on, those come off too. To transform the composite shields just off with this lower segment, pull out that long railgun-ish section, reverse the under section around like this, pop it back on, and then this little cap part section, which was not part of the original mecha, pops onto the end of that, and that just sticks into the reverse end of the composite shield. Next we move on to the arms, we flip around the fists, the entire arm folds up like this, we swivel around the shoulder section, then we put that little fin section from the torso back on here, and that connects onto this new section. This now replaces the torso. Do the exact same on the other side with the other arm. Now moving on to the legs, and this is pretty simple, just bend that knee all the way up like this, turn it around and we pull those outwards like this. That's that extra joint I mentioned earlier on. Now there's another bit of a parts formation here as we take these little fin sections, pop them onto both sides just like this right here. And that's it for the legs for now. Onto the crotch unit here, we pull down the butt flap, spin it around, pull that up a little further, and the parts change chest section we have with the arms connects in here, pull that section back once again. The crotch section pulls up all the way like this, clips onto a little clip section which holds it in place. We pull that butt flap forward again, bring back in those legs we transformed earlier on. This time around now we're gonna flip that around, leaving it on the action base. And then that waist section just connects into the legs once again, just like it was before. To finish this off then, we add those two composite shields up here, which look spectacular. Just look at that. And the last thing then, we flip out the crotch arm, attach on this little adapter, and then at least this can hold that beam rifle straight. So that is the last aspect of this. And all in all, this is one savage looking transformation. A lot of the transformations I've been looking at lately, like the Master Grade S Gundam, as well as the different variations of the Age 2 Magnum, all look fantastic, and this one does too. This is one hell of a flight form. This looks like something that flew right out of a good shmup game. All in all, I have to say I am pretty damn impressed, but once again, we do not use the torso here, so this is a 100% parts formation transformation right here. So if you pop them off like so, take off all of this from underneath. These are all new parts of this kit. This part we saw before, all of this section here, which is new with this kit, and then this is what would have been on it in the standard wound wart. So basically we just open that up and out like this, flip this segment back, and then that connects into the underside of this. So pull out that handle, this peg into that polycap, that tucks away in there, and then it's just held in the hand like that. So this would have been seen before with the wound wart, so I'm not going to pop that in. But what we can also do with that is take all of this out again, remove this little adapter segment here. Now this wire can be connected into this small little hole like so. Then these just connect up onto the shoulder as simple as that, right there. So then we parts form the composite shield once again, off with the railgun section. This time we're also removing this and this. This part towards the front where the railgun was attached pops off, then onto this segment. The armor parts strip off of these we took off of that. That is a grand total of 4 for each one. Then we take these parts, this is the parts formation, and attach those onto that. Then we take the composite shield and attach those back on under there. There's one, there is number 2, and then we've got this, which is pretty awesome. So essentially this is a big grabby mobile bit. This little segment we removed earlier on pops in to the bottom like that. That is where the wire attaches, and more than likely you're going to be needing a second action base for displaying this little guy, and then we attach the wire into that upper hole just like so. So this is a pretty awesome weapon. I do wish this wire was a little bit longer. I would have liked to have gotten one long one instead of two short ones, and you could chop it if you wanted, but I guess that is as far as it can go. But all in all, that is a pretty awesome looking weapon. And even though there's just one here, there is two. Both of the composite shields, that's this one as well, can transform into one of these. So that right there is it for the review, and I hate to admit it, but this right here is gold tier and scratched getting Gundarium tier. The reason it didn't get it, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but the reason I hate to admit this is gold tier because it's a premium Bandai kit, which means it is hard to come by, it is hard to get, and isn't really all that easy or cheap to get outside of Asia. On top of that, the wound wart, which this pretty much is a completely unique mold from the ground up, and only P-Bandai, which is crazy. This should have been a full release, and that's why I hate to admit that it is gold tier, almost Gundarium tier. The reason it didn't get Gundarium tier, so I'll get those cons out of the way first, is the ridiculous amount of stickers and lack of color accuracy, and on top of that, some of the polycaps, especially the one holding up the booster pod on the back that has to hold up those massive composite shields, with those massive barrels with the heat blades on them, that polycap just does not cut it, and those are going to flop around on you all the time. This shouldn't have used polycaps for those sort of massive guns. Of course, you can tighten those up with a little bit of paint, top coat, super glue, something like that. But besides the color and the fact that the polycaps don't cut it, this thing would have been Gundarium. It comes with so much. First off, the mobile suit itself is fantastic, unique, and like nothing else I've ever built from the Gundam universe. On top of that, it's got those two massive composite shields that can transform into those awesome scarab looking mobile bits. And they look awesome like that. They look awesome up on the backpack as those massive guns. And on top of that, this can transform into a mobile armor mode that actually looks so damn cool. So once again, besides those little color discrepancies as well as the weaker polycap joints, both of which don't mean anything if you're painting this thing is pretty much perfect. So I guess the way to put it is, if you're doing this as an out-of-box build, this thing right here would just be gold tier. So I guess at the end of the day, what I'd say is, if you're buying this just to build out-of-box like this, then it is gold tier. It is absolutely fantastic and blew my expectations away. If you're going to paint this thing though, it is Gundarium without a doubt. But anyway, officially, gold tier. But anyway, if you do want one of these of your own and you're finding it hard to come by, then you can check out that link in the description. I've put an Amazon Japan link as well as a link to sign up to buy it if you want a proxy buyer to get it from you from Amazon Japan. That is exactly what I did. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time.